Hi folks, as promised I finished the office remodel and it's time to create some Dell Tech videos for you. This first video we're going to take a look at the Dell Precision 3240 Compact. I've had the distinct pleasure of using this machine for about a month as my corporate system, and the performance in such a tiny package is quite impressive. Now, what I could do is just take you to Dell.com and kind of go through some of the demos and the 3D graphics, but let's be honest, you guys all have access to that. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. What I'd like to do instead, what I think would be a lot more fun, is to do an unboxing and a teardown with you. Now, obviously, I can't do a teardown on the system I'm using, so I've got to figure out a way to replicate that system. If I could just get it wet. No, I'm kidding. Please don't get your system wet. I am fortunate enough that I have a development unit in the box over there that we'll unbox. I also have a development unit here that we'll do the teardown on. It should be a whole lot of fun. Stay tuned. I'm never making another video. Okay, so the first thing we have to do if we're going to do a system teardown is actually take it out of the box. Let's do that now. First, standard keyboard and mouse comes with pretty much every desktop you've ever ordered ever. We'll go ahead and set those to the side. Probably very familiar with keyboards and mice by now. Over here on the right, show up the dust filter. This is a cover that goes on the front of the system. It is optional. You can order it separately. It's actually very useful in manufacturing or warehouse environments. Dust and debris gets circulated in the air. It's actually becoming more and more common with these smaller form factors, so this dust cover really pays off. We'll talk about that more when we do the system teardown there in a second. Right on the top, you've got another optional accessory. This actually mounts underneath your display alongside with this silicon sleeve here, and it allows you to mount your AC adapter behind the display. So that's an important feature because if you actually look at this AC adapter, it is absolutely massive. It is 240 watts, so it is a big AC adapter. The advantage is it allows Dell to keep the power supply out of the system and maintain that smaller form factor that actually sits up on your desk. Disadvantage, obviously, you have this big AC adapter. This thing does generate heat, so it is a good idea to keep it up off of carpet, up off the floor. Hence, this accessory comes into play. This will actually mount underneath your Dell P series or U series display. The silicon sleeve attaches to it and then allows you to hang the AC adapter off the back of the display, off the back of the desk. Also provides a little bit more cable management for those display cables.
You may now go home purged of your cables.
Now, as we carry on with these accessories, on the right here, you've got 4 mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort adapters. Again, a smaller form factor, professional graphics. You want to be able to drive more displays in order to fit those ports into a smaller system. Most manufacturers are using these mini display ports. Obviously, your displays need full DisplayPort, hence the need for these adapters with the system. The last thing, wireless antenna for the wireless card in the system. Wireless is not exactly common in desktops at this point, but again, as we reduce the form factor, we get more flexibility with where we're actually going to put the system itself, and wireless becomes more of a necessity. Having the screw-on antenna is advantageous as well because it allows you to replace this antenna with a high gain antenna, an omnidirectional antenna, a puck. All right, so let's talk about this packaging here, right? This is a compact system. It is shipped in compact packaging. You do want to keep that system, the critical component, right there in the center. This is one of those small things that some manufacturers do, some don't. By having it here in the center, it's protected, right? That's your critical piece. Now, as much as I'd like to trust my shippers, accidents happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you, but if it does, again, the critical component sits here in the center to protect it. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this guy out of the box and get ready for the teardown. I'll go through these features with you in just a second, but the last thing I'll mention now, this is a standard 100mm VISA pattern. You can get all types of mounts for this thing, put it under your desk, up on a wall, behind your monitor, between the monitor and a monitor arm. Again, more efforts to reduce that desk clutter associated to your Workstation system. Let's move on to the fun stuff and get to the teardown. Okay, let's start tearing this guy. Wait a minute. This is a Precision 7920 tower. This isn't what I need. This is way too big. Much better. Now we've got the compact system. Much, much smaller. All right, let's start tearing this thing down. The first thing I want to do is take off this dust cover. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You can see it just sits right around the front frame of the system, just like a cell phone case would. Very simple, but provides a very useful purpose. Again, for those manufacturing companies, those warehouses, that dust and debris is a large factor. Now we can get ready for the teardown, but before I do that, I want to show you some of the features on the of the system as I have it configured here. It is a little dark. This is a dark system. I'll go ahead and put a little bit of extra light on there. As you can see, we've got two USB ports on the front, one Type A, one Type C. Type C is becoming more and more common now. We still have a couple of legacy audio jacks for your headphones or microphones. If you're still using those, a lot of that is converted over to USB these days. Hard drive indicator light, and of course your power button right there on the front. We flip it around to the back. Outside of the discrete video card, which I'm going to talk about more in just a second, we've got our integrated 4 additional USB ports, integrated 1 gig NIC, 2 display ports that come native, and then 1 optional video port. Right now I've got it configured with a display port. It could be HDMI, it could be Type-C, a number of other expansion options. Of course, we've got our security features with the Noble lock or Kensington lock, the notebook style lock, and we've got a padlock style lock here. Keep any nefarious entities from getting inside the system and maybe stealing your hard drive or your video card or anything else of value. Now the video card you can see has 4 of those mini display ports. I mentioned that earlier when we were pulling out the cables. Imagine trying to put 4 of these ports across a low profile card like this. You just can't do it. The physical space isn't there. So in order to get by, we use mini display ports and we provide those adapter cables. So that's that. Let's crack this thing open. First things first, we'll undo the thumb screw. It is a captive thumb screw, so it stays in the system. You're not going to lose it. And then this is a bit of a puzzle box. Not that kind of puzzle box. First thing you've got to do, there's a couple little ridges here that help you grip this top panel. This top panel slides off towards the back. A little snap, off it comes. After that, you can effectively take the system apart. It does slide apart this way like a Z. I prefer to take the front panel cover off. A few little tabs right here. It slides off. For me personally, it feels better to be able to grip the metal frame as opposed to the plastic. I don't risk damaging it. So from that, we'll lay it back down on its feet. We'll go ahead and take the lid off. You can see where the lock slots fall. So if this system was locked, you would not be able to pull this apart. You wouldn't be able to get this off. Right? Okay, so before we actually start taking stuff out of here, I want to mention one more thing. You might have noticed I didn't need any tools to get into this system. No screwdrivers. That's also true of a lot of these replacement components. A lot of manufacturers do this now. Dell was among the first. Anything you see labeled with a blue icon or tab is going to be toollessly accessible while the system is off. So I don't need a screwdriver to get this video card out of here, or to get this heatsink and fan off of here. We'll take a look at that in a little more detail. In some of the server systems, you might see something labeled with an orange tab. The orange tab indicates that that particular component can be replaced while the system is on. Don't normally see any orange tabs in client systems. So let's start taking some of these pieces out, shall we? All right, so I'm going to show you the toolless removal first, and then we'll move over to the parts station to get a closer look at everything going on with this system. I mentioned earlier the video card right here. This is toollessly removable. I flipped over that blue tab. Out comes my GPU. Go ahead and set that over here for us. Flip it back down. I mentioned the heatsink and fan as well. Go ahead and pop that guy off. Unplug it from the system board and set that to the side. And then again, we'll get a little more detail in here, but you can see that the system is fully exposed now. I have access to my memory, my processor, my storage, my wireless card, my optional video port. Let's take a closer look. Before we move into the system itself, I want to talk about that video card just one more time. Remember I mentioned that it's low profile. We're using mini display port to get all those ports on there. You can see even with using mini display port, we've almost capped out the amount of space on this PCB for this card. And compare that to a full height card. Despite the fact that we're using this smaller PCB for this particular card, we've got all this extra room to work with. So hopefully that makes sense. Within this system, we'll take a closer look here. You can see we're using SODIMM memory. SODIMM memory is very common on our notebooks. It's a lower profile. Now memory does get hot, so you'll have noticed from earlier that when I pulled that fan off, the fan actually covers both the memory and the processor to kind of keep it cool. Or by using these SODIMMs, manufacturers like Dell are able to keep this smaller form factor and the smaller footprint. Now if we look underneath this PCIe riser here, we've got an NVMe drive here, we've got an M.2 NVMe drive here, and we've got an M.2 wireless card here. The wireless card is particularly interesting. I mentioned earlier that they're not that common in desktop systems yet.
Check this out, guys. This is insanely great. It's got a 28.8 BPS modem.
Yeah?
But you can see that by using these antennas, again, we're leveraging content from our notebooks. By using these antennas, we're able to place this wireless card realistically anywhere we want to on this system board that makes sense. Now, it is a communication device. We want to keep it away from any kind of interference, so we put it on the far corner away from the processor. But again, this allows us a lot of flexibility because then all we have to do is run the antenna wires to the actual antenna. Now we could do internal antennas, which I've seen done in some of the micros, the tinies, the smaller, even smaller than this footprint systems. Those will work, but it does reduce the amount of flexibility. By having this external antenna, you're able to put perhaps a puck on here or a high gain antenna, an omnidirectional antenna. Gives you a lot more flexibility with what you want to do with the system. Now I mentioned that they're both M.2. These are unfortunately the only items in this system that are not toollessly accessible. You can see a screw holding that wireless card down there. Let's go ahead and pop that guy out. And you see it pop up very similar to the way we saw the memory pop up over here. You might be thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just use retention clips on it the same way we do on the memory? Unfortunately, we can't do that. I mentioned that this is a M.2 22 by 30. So if we take and look at that card versus a standard M.2 drive, which I have here from the Dell UltraSpeed card, UltraSpeed Duo in this case, I've got two drives. You can see a standard 2280 M.2 storage drive here. Go ahead and pop one of these guys out. And just underneath it, you can see the 2242, the 2260, the 2280, the 22110. The reason you can't put a retention clip is because you want, again, that flexibility to be able to install any type of card in here. If I was to put the retention clip down here, I wouldn't have support for the 110 card. If I was to put the retention card clip up here, I wouldn't have support for the 2242 card. The same thing goes with some of the 2230s. Now, the other thing to consider with the 2230 card is you'll notice that these notches are different. This is called keying on an M.2 device. The keying determines how many PCI Express lanes are actually routed to that device. Typically, our wireless cards only require 1 or 2 lanes, where these M.2 high-speed storage devices want 4 lanes. Now, as with all things Precision, this is a highly configurable system. I can get up to 64 gigabytes of memory, and these SODIMM slots to 32 gigabytes apiece. I can get up to the i9-10900 or the Xeon 1290. It's currently on that 10th gen Intel processor. I can get up to 2 terabytes in each of these NVMe drives for 4 terabytes total. My video card can go all the way up to the impressive RTX 3000. However, if you don't need the video card, of course, we still have those integrated GPUs. I can shove another 2.5-inch hard drive up here if I need to increase that storage capacity in this smaller system. And again, wireless optional, just a wide range of things you can do with this system. A lot of performance in a very tiny package.
Well, that's it, folks. I hope you had as much fun watching it as I did making it. Until next time.